We have a really, probably our fullest schedule ever, and some new things of our own that will be coming very shortly. So next month at NAB, we're partners with NAB. So if you're in the TV world or the mobile world, we have 2 shows. Last year, they totally sold out with about 1,000 people each, which is our maximum. So one's called IPTV World, so if you're in that space, that's where you would go. And MoTV, which is the original, the first and original mobile television conference. So they look to sell out again, and they're going to be great conferences if you're there. And then we're happy to say that very shortly we're going to be relaunching the things that launched the company, which is our iHollywood forums in Los Angeles, which is the first thing we did, dinners and lunches. So stay tuned for that. We'll be doing some of those in the Bay Area as well. Okay, we ready to run?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it.
Hi everyone, I'm Andy Wallenstein. I cover digital media for The Hollywood Reporter, and I figured we'd take a nice, safe, tidy topic like the emerging internet video market to talk about, but you know, somehow we'll find a way to talk about a few of the issues that are going on. Is that better? Thanks. You guys heard that part, right? Why don't we just go first and do the typical panel thing? We've got a lot of people, so I'm going to ask them to be brief, but I want them to go one by one and introduce who they are, what they do, and kind of how it applies to this video market we'll be talking about. So why don't we...
Thank you. Happy to be here. My name is Jim Cascade. I'm a co-founder and CEO of iSpot Corporation, and we've created a platform that serves up the community of video enthusiasts with mashups. You may be familiar with the ability to combine various forms of digital media online, and we're smack in the middle of that, and I think that probably has very little, if any, thing to do about today. Not.
I'm Ed Sclaris from the Fox Reality Channel. We are a cable network, one of the fastest growing in News Corp. We're approaching north of 35 million homes. We did that in a little less than 2 years. Some of the shows we have are, we do about 5 originals a year. We have American Idol Extra this year with a live audience. As the person gets voted off, we pick it up. That'll be launching now. What I do there is, as Vice President of Business and Operations, I handle content acquisition, so purchasing content. We purchase from abroad as well as from NBC, CBS, so dealing with all the rights issues and, for the network. Ad sales, affiliate distribution, so that'd be both mobile, cable, IPTV, whatever the media is going to, as well as new media, which is the website and from podcasting and about. That's it.
Hi, I'm Jeff Oskadar. I'm the CEO of Handheld Entertainment. This panel, I guess, proves you got to get here early to get a good seat. Handheld is a public company traded under ZView on the NASDAQ. Our mission is to provide best of quality content to 18 to 35-year-olds, much like my colleague to the left. What we want to do is we want to combine both commercial and user-generated content. Very interesting topic given the day's events, so I'm sure we'll talk more about that. And we want to provide that content on the screens that matter the most to that demographic. And one of the things that we believe is that mobile devices, which is our heritage, handheld entertainment, and the PCs are at least as relevant, becoming more relevant to that demographic than the television.
Keith Richmond, CEO of Break.com. Break is one of the largest online communities for guys 15 to 35. We get about 1.2 to 1.3 million unique visitors a day. About 12 million video clips a day. And I think the core things that differentiate us from YouTube are, one, we have a very focused and defined audience of guys 15 to 35, and two, since I think January 2005 now, we've actually been buying content from the audience. We pay anywhere from $50 to $2,000 a clip, and we've aggregated one of the largest libraries of user-created and semi-professional content just by allowing the world to focus as our creator and then purchasing the best content from them.
I oversee the NBC Universal Digital Studios. We focus on creating custom and original video-based experiences for aggregators and marketers, as well as our own digital properties.
Fred McIntyre, SVP AWOL Video. I'm responsible for everything that AWOL does in video. We currently have one of the top 5 online video experiences as measured by Comscore's Video Metrics, reached over 20 million uniques in December, and to have one of the top 2 video experiences on the web. We've got industry-leading video search technology through TrueVio, which currently reaches over 38.5 million uniques on the web today. And we're doing a lot of stuff with UGC as well as with branded content, as illustrated by the license catalogs we have for music videos and news, but also by the work we do with people like Warner Brothers around Into TV.
Thanks, guys. Well, it looks like we much covered every conceivable angle of this video market is represented on this stage today. I don't think there's any way we could start, but I think it was Jeff mentioned, today's big news. I'm very curious, considering you all represent different ends of the business, what it means to this space that now Viacom has taken this to the level of actually suing Google, whether you're a content owner like NBC or whether you are a distributor like Break. Is this something that you think represents sort of a wake-up call or maybe even a maturation point for this market? What does this mean to you guys? I think you should all sort of take a crack at it.
So I'll jump ahead.
You suggested it, so.
Which is probably the wrong thing to do. But I think anytime there's a new technology, a technology that perhaps wasn't contemplated when a law or a set of rules were set down, there's going to be conflict. The same thing happened in the music industry, and the same thing now is beginning to happen and I guess the fight's gotten serious with some major players between user-generated and user-generated sites, social networking sites, et cetera, and some of the content owners. The answer isn't going to be that they're both going to sue each other into oblivion. The answer is going to be that there's a shade of gray that gets created by the advent of technology that had not been anticipated before. And there's a number of different areas in the law that you can look at for that. So I think that it's a first scream of Viacom to say, look, we're really not getting what we need here. But at the end of the day, the entertainment companies are going to want to have audience. And so to the extent that the agreements or the infringements are not egregious, then that's a good thing in the long run.
Okay. Anyone else want to take a shot?
Yeah, it just makes me feel like I'm back at MP3 in the days where we saw the same thing occur, and then a credible number of new business models came out of that. So I think it's exciting because this is going to be the turning point with such a large suit, resulting in, I think, us coming to an understanding of how professional content could be married with user-generated content in a way that satisfies the copyright holders as well as, the folks that are facilitating discovery and distribution of that content.
Okay. Keith?
So we don't get that many copyrighted clips ever, which, last year was a real bummer because it seemed to be fueling a lot of people's growth. And we are willing to work with all the media companies to talk to them. What we find is very clearly that there's just a lot of confusion out there, and I think it's great that people are starting to think through the issues and how deals can be done. And a perfect example is last week we ran an ad campaign for a studio where they paid us, I think $75,000 to run an ad one day with associated video, and the same studio sent us a cease and desist telling us not to run the video.
NBC, were you involved in that?
No, but it's just one of those things where you don't know what to do because oftentimes it is somebody in the marketing department. Comedy Central Spiker Comedy Central was one of our biggest advertisers last year, and I think we drive a lot of value to them. Do I know for a fact that no one's ever submitted a Comedy Central clip to us? No, but is there a reasonable chance that it was Comedy? Yeah, maybe. It's tough. It's a tough line, but I'm glad that people are finally working it out. And as people who've really done our best to try to focus on as much original content as we can, and have openly bought a lot of digital media, I think it's good to see that everyone's coming to the table for at least a dialogue.
The funny thing is when you look at this, you say there's, how come you can't just have all this content flowing all around without having any, putting it in a cage, understanding how it's being distributed. And, you know, nobody's really addressed, you know, there's unions out there, you know, the Actors Guilds, for the music. And so when you're clearing all these music clips and you're clearing all this content for a particular distribution platform, when it appears somewhere and 30, 40, 50 million views have hit that content, and it was ad supported and there was revenue that was generated because of that, then people look around and say, you know, what happened here? And if you look at studios and you look at the amount of content and the amount of business affairs folks that are clearing all this rights, it becomes an issue. So a lot of times it isn't just on the face value, it's taken at that second level, and there's a lot of people in Hollywood that keep eyes on it. So all the talent that you have for your show, and they look at Break and they look at all the other platforms and they say, wow, I'm really popular. My checkbook doesn't show that. So those are the types of things. And if you look at Europe, they've kind of, you know, the shows are a little more active in that space with the rights and everything. But I mean, that's one thing to look for, is how is that all going to get solved? And that means somebody paying somebody, and if there's money if there's a content floating around there that necessarily you're not getting paid for, there's kind of like this issue that exists.
Let's jump off of that point a bit. You know, let's put user-generated content aside and talk about what the pros are doing. I mean, certainly there's value, or we wouldn't have this lawsuit today. From a business affairs perspective, and Matthew, I'd like you to jump in as a representative of NBC, are the right clearances being made? Is this really just this ridiculously complex legal nightmare that's never going to get solved, or are we making some headway?
I think we are making some headway. It's going to take some time. I mean, I face clearance issues all the time as I'm producing original content, or we're looking to leverage our existing content that we've produced for the company. We're always looking at the challenges we're facing, but we're all working together to try to figure out the best way to overcome them. So I think we're making progress, but it's going to take time.
Okay.
I think what Keith gave as an example was right on. You look at doing a campaign, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're allowed to do the campaign probably from the marketing department, from a promotional perspective, and then the licensing department comes back and says, take that down. So I think you're looking at a lot of content owners who want to make it from a marketing perspective, and just don't quite understand how to monetize it, how to keep it under control. So YouTube is a bit scary because it's out of their control. But you're going to see a lot of major content producers embracing UGC, embracing mashups of UGC in their content, you know, coming up with new ways of allowing their audience to discover and distribute. But first as part of their own property, probably. And then they'll make syndication with some of the bigger players. And I think it'll happen in parallel, but I think it's much less scary if you're looking at it happening within your own property.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but you're also, I'm sorry.
I was just say, look, you know, NBC's certainly done a lot in promoting our shows online, whether it be YouTube or through other places. But it's that balance that we face all the time, is leveraging those opportunities to promote our content, get it in front of people, but also make sure our IP is being protected.
Brett?
Yeah, if I could offer maybe a point of view, I think if you look back at music as something that I think informs us from a historical perspective here, and this goes back to your first question a little bit. The fact that there's a lawsuit right now between Viacom and YouTube is interesting on one level, but it actually, if you look at the historical record, really the winner won't be either one of those companies. What will happen is the company who figures out now how to solve the consumer experience and figures out how to create a business model around that will win. That's what Apple did. And that's really the phase that we're in with online video today. You know, consumers are moving from site to site to site to find videos. They happen to end up on YouTube a lot of the time, but not all of the time. If you look at the top 5 sites, over 30% of the users will visit sites in a given month. If you look at other online media behaviors like radio or pictures, those numbers would be like 3 or 4%. So you have people moving around looking for things. If you can give people content, if you can give it to them in a way that works, that loads quickly, and in a way that they can engage with easily, there's a tremendous opportunity to build a business.
I mean, the interesting thing is it's not just people moving around from site to site. Now the video from site to site through embedding and all that. But I want to drill down on your point, which is, all right, so the consumer experience needs to be made better, the business model needs to be made sound. Obviously, advertising is a big part of that. You know, what are we learning at this point in terms of what works, what doesn't work? I mean, I believe it was Josh Felser on the last panel talking about, 10 seconds of pre-rolls and such. What are your findings in terms of, let's make it easier at first, what doesn't work in advertising online?
We've done a lot of the same research. We do a lot of research in this area, and the people we work with at Warner Brothers also do a lot of research here, and they share their points of view with us pretty frequently as well. What we do know is that if you look at branded content, the tolerance for advertising is actually pretty high. So if you're looking at people watching full-length television shows, they've got significantly higher tolerance, consistent with the points that Josh was making. And I think in those instances, you can actually go up to 30s and be okay. I think asking people to sit through a 30, sometimes even a 15 in front of a news clip, which may only be a minute and a half long, the tolerance goes down. And I think by the time you get into UGC formats, the tolerance is substantially zero because, to your point, those experiences are available somewhere on the web without an ad. Mm-hmm. And the way that users are moving from site to site, they will gravitate towards those experiences. And I think a lot of the tension that you see with advertising, it's not about advertising itself. It's actually about time. If you think about one of the biggest problems that online video solves for a user is time. It gives people the ability to take back some control over their time. They missed Desperate Housewives last night. They can go watch it on abc.com. And that gives them some control over their schedule in a way that they didn't have before. When you put advertising into the mix, you're taking 15, 20, 30 seconds of someone's time. Mm-hmm. And the value exchange between you and that user has to be pretty significant. Otherwise, people are going to feel like they didn't get a fair deal.
Keith, you want to take off from there?
What we found, we found that it's not just about pre-roll or post-roll. It's about integrating in a brand and giving the brand prominence. And there's a lot of ways to accomplish that. And if you look at our site on any given day, there might be a sponsored video promotion running. There might be a brand. We might skin the homepage for a brand. We might integrate in original produced content for a brand. And so I'm a big believer in exactly what Fred said, which is in front of a single 30-second piece of user-generated content, the value proposition simply isn't there. I think as we expand the definition of user, and in our minds, the user is not just a kid in anymore. It's, we have semi-professionals doing stuff. We have actors coming in to pitch us things. We've got directors wanting to work with us. Suddenly, users' tolerance for pre-roll in front of stuff produced by actors who they know and directors who they respect changes entirely. And when you lever on top of that the fact that you can actually do a fair amount of brand and product integration in and around the content, the models are going to work. It's just a matter of picking your points where you think you're going to put a lot of advertising and which ways you integrate in sponsorship. And a great example is last week we ran a campaign where we had, just like on television, a little thing run across the bottom of the flash player on the videos, and it was just like you'll see on a normal television program. It was not obtrusive to the user experience. The brand experience was fantastic, and it worked for everybody, and you'll see a lot more of those kind of integrations.
Are you saying it's like a ticker?
Basically, like in the beginning of the clip, it said "brought to you by."
Yeah, there's a lot of action with ticker formats now. Point Roll is doing some really interesting stuff with their Ticker Boy format. We announced a deal with Point Roll earlier this week. Video Egg, who we also work with, is doing a lot with tickers as well.
Yeah, and I'd echo the thought on the branded sort of entertainment angle as we go online. A show we produce for MSN called The Big Life is one where certainly display advertising, pre-roll, all of that's an important part of the program. But we've worked with MSN and their sales force to find ways to integrate sponsors into the actual shows themselves. That's where we bring value in trying to find that balance between creating a good user experience, as Fred was talking about, but also giving the brand and the marketer the opportunity to get their messaging across. And I think, we're going to go one step further from that and start to create content and shows in parallel with advertisers from the ground up.
Okay. Jim?
I think we got to look a little bit at the forest instead of the trees. So whether it's pre-roll, post-roll, bumper, ticker, all those are kind of tactical moves, and we're kind of focused at a level higher in terms of engaging consumers with the application that's sticky, that gets you on the page longer, that gets you to engage the brand. And that's, spending 10 years in targeted advertising applications. The advertisers are looking for things where you can get the demographic that you want, and you can get to that demographic for a significant amount of time. And how you do that, whether it's on page or in video, I think it gets to be more tactical. And so for us, we worked with one brand where we've gotten 2,000 registrations a day, over 1,000 mixes a day, engaged with their property, and it's incredibly sticky. And that's what that brand and the advertisers around it truly want. And so looking for some of the applications that are engaging the user is kind of where we come from, and what what we've kind of focused on as a company. And I think I see some of that, evolving across this, this user-generated videos.
Okay. One of the themes that I think just came out of what we were talking about is the value of user-generated versus professional, for lack of a better term, generated content. I mean, it seems kind of like there was some bashing going on here in terms of what user-generated really brings to the table. Is this something that could be monetized in any significant way?
Yeah, go ahead. We monetize it every day. I think the question ultimately becomes, is user-generated content good? And on a clip-by-clip basis, the answer is probably no. When you add in the fact that 1 billion people are creating it on a pure numbers game, you get some very well-produced, high-quality content there. I think at the same time, increasingly, there's a strong recognition that professionally produced content by guys like Matthew is valuable because it's more predictable. There's a clear set of advertisers who want to be associated with it, and maybe the conversation will be different because the advertisers will respect the semi-professional community and be eager to associate with them. We see that. We get brands coming in all day long saying, we just want to be next to young filmmakers. We want to be next to young comedians. But on a whole, you can be assured that a guy like Matthew is going to produce content more regularly, better. On a numbers game, they got 1 billion people. A couple of those clips every day are going to be as good as Matthew's.
Yeah, I agree with Keith.
Thanks, Keith.
I think that okay, guys. Here.
Yeah.
I think it's just entertainment, and I think what's interesting is how level the playing field has gotten because of the last 10 years of technology. Now, if you are a budding Spielberg or a budding great comedian, you can actually get a lot of audience and get a lot of attention in a much quicker way. That's going to be very disruptive over the next couple of years to business models that are now in place. And I think some of the symptoms are some of these that are going to come up. But the point is that you've got this tremendous ability to broadcast great content, and we have 500,000 roughly user-generated clips. We've got about 11,000 pieces of commercial content, ranging from independent films to professional music videos. And just as Keith was saying, there's a real long tail on the big number, but there's a lot of it that's awfully good, and a lot of the professional stuff is not as good as you might think. Ultimately, we're going to mix all of this together and just give our users the entertainment that they want to see, whether it's user-generated or not. And I think that you're going to see that the quality between the two is going to get closer and closer over time.
Over this weekend was really fascinating. There was this one kid who posted 5 clips of songs on the site, and we featured 2 or 3 of them, and it was these parody songs. Like one of them was called "My Whole Family Thinks I'm Gay." There was like a whole bunch of very funny songs, and we made the decision Monday morning we were going to call him up and deal with him. And by the time we called him, and we posted the clips, we featured the clips, by the time we called him, he had already had advertisers wanting him to write songs, wanting them to be featured in songs. He'd already had like 6 or 7 agents call. It was just unbelievable how quickly the semi-professional and the professional are blending. And he still is happy to work with us, but just from Saturday morning when we put up this clip to Monday morning, just how quickly he had achieved some level of fame and was already out of our price range was unbelievable.
Compelling is to think about how you can combine user-generated content with more of a programming packaged approach, produced approach. Something we produced for our television stations division last fall was a show called Junior Year Abroad, where we sent students around to all of the 10 different countries. They shot their experiences, sent those tapes into us, and we were able to edit those and package them up. So you got a combination of the UGC, but with professionally produced content to create a really reliable platform that you could take out to sponsors.
That was one of the things I was going to talk about. We, of course, coming from reality, having, American Idol and all the great things, you would think the tolerance for people, like the 2-3 minute clip, you go to the website and that's a great, great piece of content. And then you think, well, that'd be great. We could maybe make a show out of that, right? We attempted to do that. What did you find out is, and the NBC did it the best way, they provided some of the audio, they provide some of the cage to put it in to make it presentable. But people are used to either, TV content is professional. If you ever take user-generated and put it on TV, none of you would probably ever watch it. So it's kind of like this, it's not only thinking that TV stuff goes on broadband, but potentially broadband stuff can go on TV, but the audio tracks are bad, the camera lighting, all the things that it takes, that you guys, your tolerance for TV is much, much, much higher. So it's it'll be interesting to see in the future when professionals get involved where it can actually reside on a TV, and hopefully, 42-inch plasma reality stars in their backyard doesn't really show well and is really boring. But hopefully that'll change and you'll actually see both vice versa, because I know that's what we look at is how do you take and really have a marriage experience where you have your show and then it continues on the web.
Actually, to just play on that, sorry, but you got to move fast on this group. That's where I think the mobile devices come in, because I think there's a correlation between size of screen and amount of time and attention span. And so as you start, as this user-generated content, I think is just absolutely perfect for the mobile world, because you're not in front of the screen as long. It's interruptible. It's only 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes long. So it's a snack. It's not a whole meal. And it's also something that you can share directly. So for example, if I see something on Keith's site that I really like, I can email it to somebody. And then that's two computers sharing an experience with an indirect experience between the two people. I can actually hand my device, my handheld device, to a friend and say, "Hey, get a load of this cat duct tape to a skateboard," or whatever the whatever the case may be. So that's, I think, the mobility factor is very important to consider.
Jim?
I think, just to respond to Ed's comment, I agree that it's not ideal to see UGC on a large screen, but, America's Funniest Home are not the most high quality either, and yet it's got a pretty good audience. And I think a lot of people are really interested in looking at what other people are doing on the streets and less on what's coming from the core central, TV broadcast. And I think the marriage of the two is where it's really going to happen. And whether it's on, whether it's on TV, broadband, or mobile, I think there's a home in all the screens if it's done right.
Well, especially in the long term. It sounds kind of silly, but a lot of 15-year-olds now know HTML. 16-year-olds know HTML, and I definitively remember that was not taught when I went through high school. And so I think a lot of these guys, these people, and we see it every holiday season, the quality of the video and the quality and the size of the file sizes increase. And so if you take a 3 or 5 year look at what's happening in the world and the kind of courses people are taking and the kind of equipment they're getting, yeah, today most stuff doesn't translate well to TV. There's still a lot of problems that need to be solved. 5 years, will a lot of it translate very well to TV? Absolutely.
I just want to make one comment about America's Funniest Home Videos. They have a professional soundtrack, professional noise, professional voiceover. That's actually produced content. So there may be a kid running around on a bike, but there was a lot of money poured into making that look good. And when you see it looking good, it doesn't necessarily look great.
Yeah, I think, we've all been in this, I think, not speaking for everybody, certainly in this space for a long time. And it's going to be either or, right? That's the thing. It's not one or the other. For Keith's audience, that's what they want. They want to go and see all these great videos that he's able to aggregate, but other viewers might want to be able to watch something professional. I think both are going to live together for a while.
Yeah, in the same way that cable networks drove a dramatic cut in the production costs that went into television programming, I think you'll see the internet do the same thing to produce programming in general. And to Keith's point, the quality of the equipment going online right now is pretty powerful. So I think that part of what we're missing as we talk around this is the fact that the relationship that people have with content is also changing from the standpoint of time. So what I mean to say is, if you think about something like Caddyshack, right? That's a movie that when I was in high school, people would sit through for an hour and a half or 2 hours so they could watch each one of the funny bits. That's a movie day that somebody in high school is going to want to watch each one of those 30-second funny bits, and everything else in the movie is just a waste of time. So the relationship that people have with narrative has changed, and the implications that that's going to have for the production of programming is going to change, whether that programming is produced by a studio or someone working in their garage.
But do you all agree with that? Because I think it's a pretty stark statement. I mean, is linear long-form storytelling really endangered by what is going on now in terms of internet video habits, or as some of you have also suggested, that all things coexist, all things are additive?
I think it has to be additive. I mean, stories have been told since stories could be told, so they always will be told in a long-form linear format. I think the Caddyshack example, I mean, I've probably got a few slices that I haven't shared with anybody, but you know, I've got all of my favorite scenes. There's I'm having your moment now. So I think that the bite-sized highlights are fine, but you'll always have somebody who wants to tell a long story that people will be interested in.
Yeah, my point is not to say that narrative is dead. My point is to say that there is increased market demand for this short-form, bite-sized type of content and consumption.
Especially when you start talking about mobile.
Well, let's get on that. Not only mobile, but TV, because that's been floating into the conversation a bit. Internet video is no longer just for the internet. Apple TV is going to be shipping real soon. Mobile, you're seeing more of these deals with the Revers and YouTubes of the world. What is this going to mean for the internet video market, if we could even call it, you know, I mean, it almost seems to limit it to call it that.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you think about how much video was online a year ago, in our video search index, you were probably in the low single-digit millions. Today, you are in the high teens, and our projection is that by the end of the year, you'll probably be somewhere around 50 million online videos that we'll need to be able to index and return to people as part of our video search index. So if you think about that rate of growth, it's staggering, right? If in January of 2006, if I had told you that, you know, within 6 months, ABC would be taking its most popular primetime shows and making them available free for streaming on the internet before June, you wouldn't have believed me. If I had told you that a site that you had never heard of would have people uploading over 100,000 videos a day, every day, you wouldn't have believed me. Both of those things happened. And that rate of proliferation and adoption continues to accelerate. So I think that there will be a big problem to solve for consumers in the area of helping them find the video that they want to watch, because the amount of video online is going to be overwhelming.
Yeah, I think you just need to think about video in terms of all the platforms. It's digital video, it's not internet video. And when we produce content, we think about that, and you have to, and not every piece of video is going to make sense for all of the platforms. You have to, again, keep in mind what the context is.
Okay. Why don't we turn to the audience now for some questions? Raise your hand, and why don't you stand up and ask?
Combine that together with this, I think eventually it becomes to a point where Hollywood isn't a threat. Really. I think 10 years from now, kids are going to be animating things, producing whole length movies on a computer with no avatar.
Well, I got to it first. I think that's just an example of what is, from a big picture perspective, this is the era of participation. So you no longer are just consuming. That was last year, where, you know, obviously we had a lot of people viewing YouTube videos, but now we're seeing more and more people jumping into the mix on creating or being authors of their own content, and you know, creating their own channels of content.
I think it's a threat if you don't adapt. I think that if you say assume a 5-year horizon, if you don't adapt over that period of time, distribution will no longer be the key factor, right? Distribution of content will become easy, and so the playing field gets completely leveled. So that means, traditional Hollywood distributors need to start thinking about things differently, just the way the music industry had to start thinking about things differently when Napster burst onto the scene.
And to defend Hollywood, #1 movies at the box office this week. 300 is this visually brilliant movie that I guarantee you any kid is not going to be able to approximate at home. But I want to take another question.
Hollywood.
Hi, Ken Brickley from UMill. The Caddyshack scenario and digital rights. What happens if I want to mash up a clip from Caddyshack with my own voiceover, et cetera? How am I going to do that? Am I going to have to pay for that clip, or is that going to be a form of promotion from the producers, et cetera?
Content owners?
Well, I guess from a mashup perspective, we can speak with a little bit of experience. You're going to see a lot of people providing content on a promotional basis just to get their feet, dipping their toes in the water. And we've done over 30 promotions with content providers from major record labels and film studios, and it's happening. And you're going to see licensed content being offered up for mashup as well, but from those properties within a somewhat of a controlled environment. And that's happening already today as well.
I think as a site owner, I think nothing would make us happier if somebody would go and do all those deals so that we could charge our audience $2, just like the ringtone companies do, for the right to use that clip of Caddyshack within it. I mean, that would be one of the greatest services that someone could do for all the investors out there. We would totally do a deal where we can take 50 cents, let the studio take $1, let the guy take 50 cents, or we'd probably take $1, honestly, where we allow our users to play with Caddyshack and everyone accretes some value in the process. We think about that a lot. We just don't have the bandwidth to do those deals right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of that stuff is going to be done on a promotional basis. You get into a lot of clearance issues that you have to factor in.
What about for old libraries?
Clearance issues are
Same story.
We're powering 3 different properties, one a major sports league, one a major studio, one a major record label group that's allowing their content to be mashed up. So it's here today. It's happening. But again, it's within, it's within somewhat of a controlled, well, not somewhat, within a controlled environment.
When you talk about the whole library, there's people that it would take weeks, if not months and months and months, in some of that old library footage to even find the rights holders. These are production companies that don't exist. The husband died, it's the wife. That's what Business Affairs does, is hunt down all the rights to the content. So a lot of it, you're just talking about a lot of manpower and lawyers hunting down the content.
Yeah, and then you're thinking about it, you got to see the value of doing that. Are you going to be able to monetize that or get enough promotional bang for all of that effort? And that's, what we all struggle with.
Do we have time for one more? Or?
A little bit of time. We're actually on schedule. Or we can break. Any more questions? Okay, let's give him a hand.
So comprehensive.
So we're going to go to a break now. There's food and drink outside, and we're going to reconvene at 12. You don't want to miss this. This is our focus group. Usually among the most popular features of the conference. Should be with kids. Should be a lot of fun.